The number 4 should probably be banned from all future Philadelphia 76ers players. If just one of those 4 bounces go in another direction, the 76ers might not have a problem. Not to mention, it was an off-balance, contested corner shot over Joel Embiid. Embiid, Simmons, and Butler just took the Raptors to Game 7 and almost won. Perhaps should have won if physics was just a half of a fraction off. The Raptors went to 6 games in the following 2 series, but convincingly beat the Bucks and the Warriors. The closest series by far was against Philly. Were they the real best team that year? Ciao amici, welcome to Takes in Fuego. Today we will take a look at the options available to Philadelphia right now after a long and painful road for Philly fans. The story starts in 2013. The 76ers had a decent year, finishing just outside of the playoffs in the East. The year before, Iguodala, Elton Brand, Lou Williams, and even Nikola Vucevic helped the Sixers through the postseason. They nearly made the Eastern Conference Finals. A massive 4-team trade that offseason shipped Iguodala to Denver and Vucevic to Orlando, while Lou Williams and Elton Brand left in free agency. In 2013, some new leadership took over. Brett Brown was hired to be the coach, and Sam Hinkie was hired to be the GM. And Hinkie went to work right away, trading Drew Holiday, the team's only All-Star, for the rights to Nerlens Noel, the number 6 pick in the draft that year. They decided to completely tear down and rebuild. The process had begun. After a 19-63 record, the Sixers got the 3rd draft pick for the 2014 NBA Draft. Enter Joel Embiid, a number 1 pick talent who just underwent surgery in his right foot and had serious injury concerns to most teams. To the team that's still trying to tank though, it's exactly what they needed. The Sixers didn't see Embiid play on the court for 2 full seasons. In the 2016 offseason, and after a 10-72 record that year, Sam Hinkie resigned. It turned out to be an even bigger offseason as their number 1 pick in the draft that year allowed them to take Ben Simmons. The framework of the process is now set. Not that there weren't some missteps along the way in the process. There certainly were. Their 2015 draft pick was number 3, Jahlil Okafor. And the most obviously devastating one was Markelle Fultz, who Philly traded away 2 first-round picks to move up 2 spots to number 1 to select. One of those picks, as we now know, turned into Jason Tatum. Not all trades come with a winner and a loser, but this one certainly did. In late 2018, Jimmy Butler was terrorizing Andrew Wiggins and company in practice and not taking shots while doing it. He did take shots at the Timberwolves though with Rachel Nichols, leaving the door open for the trade with Philadelphia. As Butler was traded to Philly and Tobias was traded before the deadline as well, the process was seemingly complete. Their lineup was now Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, and JJ Redick, which has to be the most talented lineup of the playoffs in 2019, when you take into account the Warriors' injuries, of course. Embiid destroyed entire teams defensively, Ben created shots for himself and everyone else, and Jimmy Butler had the killer instinct to close out big games. Unfortunately, Kawhi was still the best player on the court in the Raptors series, and he let them know it with the 4-bounce exclamation point. Jimmy Butler and JJ Redick are missing from the 2019-2020 roster, but Philly had all kinds of reasons to be excited still. 3 of their 4 best players returned with Simmons, Embiid, and Harris, and their new acquisitions, Al Horford and Josh Richardson, were exciting as well. Horford was a solid center for the Boston Celtics, and Richardson was coming off a 16-point per game season as well. Not bad for your 5th offensive option. The 76ers were picked by many NBA analysts to be 2020 champions, and many thought they were a lock to come out of the East. As we now know, a number of these moves turned out to be mistakes. They re-signed Brett Brown, Butler's polished basketball play and shots in big moments were glaringly missing, and they had no answer for it. Harris and Horford have turned into some of the worst contracts in the league, and the team just never fit together. Was there a game plan of how to play this whole time? Because in the playoff series against the Celtics, the differences between the 2 teams were glaring. On one hand, you have the Celtics, a basketball unit that has an identity. They're not the most talented team in the postseason, but they know how to play together. almost always rotating to open offensive players correctly, and just seemed in groove with each other offensively. Spread the ball around, run Kemba in a pick and roll, Tatum and Brown isolations to get to the rim, or dish for an open three. They just gelled. Contrast with the 76ers without Ben Simmons, and it seemed like no one could create a shot besides Joel Embiid when he actually went to work. Their defense was lackluster, and the Celtics got far more wide open looks due to the Sixers' late rotations or Embiid directly under the rim when his rotation was at the 3-point line. And offensively, there just didn't seem like a plan, almost like a, okay, now your turn for isolation type of offense. Considering how close they were to the title of the year prior, and considering how basically they had no business being in the bubble at all, it's astonishing how fast Philly seems to have fallen. There are a number of problems that cause this. Brett Brown seems to be a great developer. He essentially taught Joel Embiid, a raw and injured talent, how to be effective in the NBA. He taught Ben Simmons, a 6'10 power forward, how to play point guard. A number of undrafted players became valuable out of Philly, including Robert Covington and TJ McConnell. Brown has to get some of that credit. By all accounts, Brett Brown seems like a great person. Polite, patient, friendly. These are great qualities for a friend. Unfortunately, it doesn't always translate to NBA wins. The news stories and quotes that have come out have kind of told us what we always knew. Josh Richardson would say he's got to have accountability. I don't think there was much accountability this season, and I think that was part of our problem. When your top 5 center is having a hard time breathing after going up and down the court and mentally checking out of games, when your top 15 talent point guard doesn't shoot, period, the coach just has to push. Come on, man. Embiid said, "I wish we found our identity offensively or defensively. I felt like our focus was not always there." That was increasingly apparent with every game the Sixers played this season. Who are the 76ers? What is the game plan? What adjustments are being made to reduce the number of open shots from the opponent? Why are Horford and Embiid playing so much together? Why is Joel Embiid still shooting his 32% three-point shot once a quarter? Brown has been there for all the bad, the 10-72 season and the others, and he's been there for a few exciting moments, but he will not be there anymore. The next glaring problem is one that's been known for a long time. Is Ben Simmons a top 15 talent? Yes. Is Joel Embiid a top 5 talent? Yes. Do they fit together? No, not even really close. Joel Embiid as a force of nature is one of the best in the league. He ruins entire defensive series when he tries, he's an outstanding rebounder, and the thought of Daniel Tice taking up Joel Embiid in the post, I know he's a good defender, but come on. We know who's winning, or at least we know who should win that series. He's fouled on about 20% of his shots, getting to the line often. Unfortunately, it just doesn't seem like he's completely checked into games. And not just sometimes, like every other game. He showed up to the bubble out of shape, which is not a new problem. At a certain point, potential is just potential, and when you show up proving otherwise, it's a problem. Andrew Wiggins knows what I'm talking about. Ben Simmons is one of the best players in the league at creating for his teammates. He's special. He gets the Magic comparisons for a reason. His ability to handle the ball at 6'10" is incredible, and he is one of the best defenders in the league. In fact, he defended All-Stars more often than anyone in the league last year and led the league in steals, making him a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. And yet, the weaknesses are so glaring we get upset at him. How hard is it to learn to shoot? Everyone else at your position can at least do it a little bit. Which highlights why these stars just weren't meant for each other. You have one star who's meant to dominate the low post area and rebounds incredibly, and your other star needs to get to the rim and kick to be effective and rebounds incredibly. While neither have an outstanding mid-range or a three-point shot. At least Embiid has one, I suppose, but both of these stars just would function better without the other. Simmons would be most effective surrounded by shooters while he gets to the rim and kicks when he can, similar to Luka or Harden. Embiid would be most effective surrounded by shooters while he completely owns the post area, which would force the defense to leave a shooter open if they decided to collapse on Embiid. Leaving Simmons open has less consequences. Well, at least you have Horford and others that can stretch the floor with these two, right? Wrong. The lineup with Embiid and Horford has been the worst net rating for a two-man lineup on the 76ers this season, and Horford, who came off an all-star season just 2 years ago, is getting drowned with money. At 34 years old, he just signed a $109 million contract, and when he turns 37 and he's getting paid nearly $27 million, good luck trying to move off that contract or trying to make this situation work. Tobias Harris looks great as an accessory guy, say the fourth option in your offense. Also, he looks like a terrible contract. The last year of his deal, he will make $40 million. That's like a house in San Francisco. The 76ers gave up Landry Shamet, 4 draft picks, and a few expiring contracts for 5 months of Tobias Harris. Many analysts thought this was an overreach at the time. The Sixers confounded the mistake by giving Harris this contract, making it virtually untradeable. And their identity is just tough. Still, it was never clear who they were, their defensive rotations were lazy, and when they needed a bucket, generally speaking, it was difficult for them to know the plan. So is this the end? Have the Sixers already been processed? Well, there are a number of moves they can still make. Not all hope is lost yet, and it shouldn't be when you have 2 of the top 15 guys. The Brooklyn Nets are pursuing Popovich this offseason, and why not throw the 76ers into that ring? They could certainly benefit from someone who knows the mentality of being there. Popovich has not been linked to the team so far though. Here is who has. Ty Lue, 76ers assistant coach Udoka, Dave Jorger, and Jay Wright. Ty Lue is excellent at being yelled at by LeBron. Udoka would be a good move if looking to stay within the organization, and if he can plan a bit better than Brett Brown. Udoka has spent time around the league and is partially credited for the development of Kawhi Leonard in his time with the Spurs. Dave Jorger has been coaching in the NBA with mixed success, and Jay Wright has a confusing NCAA record, which includes being upset as the 1 seed regularly and being national champions 2 of the past 4 years. All of these candidates appear to show promise. The trade value of Embiid and Simmons is going to be big, with Embiid under contract 3 more years and Simmons under contract for 5 more. If they were to take the route of building around Simmons, they would likely be looking for shooters, a lot of them, to clear out the lane like the Rockets and Mavericks are currently already doing. Here are some of the best fake trades around. Embiid and Josh Richardson for Tatum and Gordon Hayward. The Celtics are loaded up at the smaller positions and have Daniel Tice at center. All due respect, but when you consider they have a variety of other players that can still stretch the floor around Embiid in a pick and roll game with Kemba, which will force the defense to make a tough decision, Embiid and Kemba will make for a great duo. On the flip side, Tatum and Hayward can stretch the floor on offense and are versatile on defense, with Tatum being potentially one of the best defenders in the league. Another trade to think about is Ben Simmons for Bradley Beal along with this year's first round draft pick, another one that works well. Washington would have a top 15 talent in Simmons and could try to legitimately compete for a playoff spot, more than they've done in the past 2 years. If Philly trades Simmons, Washington would need to surround him with shooters, which may be easier to plan for. For the Sixers, Beal would stretch the floor, providing scoring and secondary playmaking to go along with Embiid. Trading Harris or Horford sounds great, but who will take these nasty contracts? Generally speaking, in a bad contract scenario, you attach a draft pick, such as the Wiggins-Warrior trade, or you attach more young assets to it. I wouldn't trade away the future to get off their present contracts. So what will Philly probably do? Well, Brown probably should have been gone at the end of 2019, and now the 76ers are moving on. Philly will likely give the new coach another shot with Embiid and Simmons before deciding to move on from them. In the Sixers' current contract situation, they seem all but stuck. Not a lot of wiggle room in any direction. With that being said, I would watch for GM Elton Brand to trade Harris or Horford and throw in potential draft capital. He might not be there anyway to pay for it in the future, right? Elton Brand may be already on a shorter leash. Everything with how the Sixers failed to keep Butler in the offseason, the depth of the team, and how Horford and Harris don't seem to fit, and the fact they are 2 of some of the worst contracts in the league. Here would be my plan. I would give the coaching gig to either Jay Wright of Villanova or the assistant coach in Philly if they feel he can develop a blueprint for how these players should coexist and how to stagger minutes. I would also give the coach a chance to figure out the Embiid Simmons situation, but a small one. If I don't see promise by the trade deadline, one of them is gone. And I would move on from Joel Embiid before I would Ben Simmons. Joel Embiid is a top 5 talent, but at a certain point, the discipline just has to be there. He seems to take off entire games sometimes and shows up out of shape at an important time for the Sixers. He just seems undisciplined and indifferent to losing. Embiid also provides a harder challenge to build around, as the Sixers would need another playmaker on the team that could create a shot for other players. Ben Simmons, on the other hand, is a top defensive player and on the offensive end is just easier to build around. Plug in 4 shooters. Without Embiid, Horford is perhaps in a better situation and could rejuvenate his career, making him more valuable to the Sixers or perhaps raising his trade value. I would refuse to give up an asset to get off the Harris and Horford contracts. I don't believe mistakes are fixed with more mistakes. But what would you do? Let me know in the comments below. For how it all went wrong with Jimmy Butler, check out the video on the screen and be sure to subscribe or I will enter you in a wrestling contest against Joel Embiid.